Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as they always say. And in this video, it's all about military encounters with just weird things. So, if that sounds like something you like, then definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. I was deployed when I was 19, and during this particular time, I had the O200 guard shift in a red zone. We heard shuffling up in the nearby mountain brush, right around 20 meters or so. I wake everyone up, and we're ordering whoever's in the brush to come out and surrender. This is a little too close for comfort. I'm scared and my heart is pounding. All of a sudden, guys start yelling and firing, taking off in different directions. It's hard to tell what's going on because there's so much gunfire. Everyone starts firing into the brush and running for cover. Very few of them are retaliating. I realize that most of them are firing into the air. All of them are screaming in Arabic. There's this loud screeching noise that's coming from above, and it's clearly audible over the rifle fire. A few of us think, oh great, F me sideways, what the hell is this? The small arms exchange lasts for several more minutes, and then everything quiets down. There's no friendlies that are injured. We start poking around in the brush for dead or wounded. We find, near a set of boulders, this mutilated corpse. It looks like his chest has been torn into. We know that bullets didn't do that. He's been here for a while. We keep looking. We find a middle-aged man lying in the brush. He's hit pretty bad and probably won't pull through. I start treating him the best I can anyways. He grabs the SSG by the collar. He's saying something, but his voice is gurgly. He repeats it over and over and over again for the next few minutes before he finally passes out. I asked the 2LT what the guy was saying, and he said he was saying the same thing as a couple others. It sounds like Owl Man. I won't say where, but I was deployed way out in the middle of basically absolute nowhere. We got intel that says that a nearby pump house is crawling with insurgents. Recon also spotted a sniper's nest not too far from our location, and we obviously can't advance with so many hostiles close to our AO. We were waiting on the J-dams to clear out the nest in the pump house, and it was taking a long time. The comm says that there is some kind of aircraft in our area, and we all believe this must be some kind of screw-up because the skies are clear. They tell us again that there's definitely something up there, and it's damn close to our location. The SSG is mad as hell because he says there's clearly nothing out here. And then we hear this god-awful screeching. It was terrible and grating to the ears. We're trying to find the source, but we can't find anything. Nobody can see anything. This goes on for almost a half an hour, until it abruptly stops, and then our comm says everything is now clear, and they come and blow both buildings up. But now, for the next several days, the comm keeps pointing out more of these phantom blips that are accompanied by screeching and other creepy as hell sounds. Later on, we learned of a local legend where they talked about something called the Owl Man. My granddad told me a really strange story about something that happened to him in Vietnam. Some details I can't recall, but I'll try. So my granddad was with his squad, traipsing through the jungle, fighting the Viet Congs. It started to get dark on this particular night, so they set up camp. As dawn breaks, somebody spots movement a few hundred yards away. My granddad and his squad are like, oh crap, and they find cover. It looks to be a 10-man team in single file coming toward them, cutting through the brush with machetes. The squad decides not to engage and just stay in cover. The strangers get closer. They seem to be on patrol. They get to within a few yards. It was then that my granddad and the rest of the squad realized it wasn't people at all. It was a group of rock apes armed with sticks that were on patrol, quotes. As the squad watched on, he said that the rock apes kept formation, single file, and they acted almost human. Their behavior was intelligent. He wasn't sure if they were looking for soldiers or for food, but the squad thought it was better if they just stayed hidden and waited for them to pass. The way he told it was obviously better, but the thought of a line of these things patrolling with sticks always makes me smile. It must have been pretty surreal to see. I didn't experience this myself, obviously. The story was told by my granduncle. So it's World War II, and my granduncle is in the Wehrmacht. 1945 comes around, and things are kind of bad, obviously. My granduncle and his unit have walked straight into a bunch of Russians. For some reason, both sides are too surprised to actually start shooting. Suddenly, there's this huge blinding flash, as if it was from an artillery shell, but there's no noise, no smoke, no shrapnel, nothing. Zip. Just blinding light. The Germans and Russians stare at each other for about 3 seconds, and then it seems that both sides are overcome by this immense fear, so much so that they both turn and run, each for their own front lines. I don't know what this could have been. It was just a very strange occurrence that happened during the war. I heard this from my father back in the early 1990s. His cousin was an MP at the White Sands Missile Range back in the early 70s, and they had quite a bit of weird stuff happen. Like they would patrol late at night, and they would have a smoke while checking out some empty hangars. They would shine a flashlight around and make sure no one was in there. The thing is, they would often hear people in there, like footsteps, talking, but then when they would point the flashlights at the sound, there would be nothing there. So one night, he and his partner were parked out at the middle of nowhere. They were having a smoke when they heard footsteps again. This time, they pointed their flashlights at it. They saw the brush parting like someone invisible was walking toward them. They just decided to get out of that area. So all of this went on for quite a while. Then something really freaky happened. This one MP, who was a real tough guy, back from Vietnam, not afraid of anything, his partner was sick, and rather than get someone else, he decided that he was, again, a tough guy, and went out alone. Everything was going as normal, totally fine. But then, he stopped reporting in. They finally found his Jeep after a search, abandoned in the middle of the road. The guy had apparently torn open his leg, trying to wedge himself behind the seat. He had emptied his sidearm through the windshield at something other than the blood. They never found him, or any trace of him. I have heard since then that around that time that they had weird things happen to random people there. It got pretty hushed up by the people in charge of the base. Not sure if it was the same guy, but the time period is pretty suggestive. I managed to get 2 stories out of my husband. He really underplays this stuff, but it was interesting enough for him to remember these and tell me. So his first deployment was in 03 or 04 in Mosul, Iraq. My husband, who I'll call Al, and Sergeant J, they were both on guard duty. It was this pretty well secured base at the time. Nothing really ever happened there. So Al and Sergeant J are laying on their backs, looking into the sky, kind of like Timon and Pumbaa from The Lion King. All of a sudden, right above them, this huge, blinding flash of light that lasts about 3 seconds. There's no sound. The light leaves behind what he described as a crack in the sky. He's pretty adamant that he can't describe it properly. That's the only way he can describe is a crack in the sky. He said that it was like there was a tear in the sky from which light was coming behind it. And he said the way it lingered there kind of gave off like an aurora borealis look. It was really weird, and again, there was no sound. Al, who was then a private, asked Sergeant J if they should call that in. Sergeant J replies, "And tell them what? What would we say?" The second story that he told me was from 2009 to 2010. This was FOB Garda, Afghanistan. He's on guard duty again, but Al is now a sergeant and he is with Private G. They're just chilling in the guard tower, looking around the middle of the night. They both spot a light that looks like an aircraft, although they can make out no definition. It's going back and forth in the sky, going faster and doing crazy maneuvers that no aircraft known to them is even remotely capable of. Far off in the distance they see and hear a Black Hawk helicopter heading towards the light. As the chopper gets closer, the light stops, and it seems to, for the lack of a better description, notice the Black Hawk. It stops for a brief second. Then the light does this super weird, super fast kind of loop-de-loop maneuver, and then takes off so quickly that it's gone in an instant. Private G talked about it just all that week. He was convinced that it was aliens. So I've never talked about anything like this before, but reading a few of other people's experiences have rekindled my interest as of late, and I feel that maybe some experiences I've had will be relevant. So this was when I was an infantry marine. I was back from deployment, and I had been stateside at least 6 months by the time. I was drinking at the barracks with some other grunts one night, and me and my buddy Arby were smashing back some Millers. Arby had a different deployment than I did. He and some others were extended to handle a mission in Syria, and as we're drinking, we start sharing stories. He mentions his time in Al-Shaddadi, the patrol base, PB, that they set up is in a former ISIS prison or torture facility. This one building in particular has a bunch of empty cells with bloodstains and Arabic scratched into the walls of the terp. Translated, it's Allah help us, why has God abandoned me, etc. Just really unnerving, disturbing stuff. Arby mentioned that even the SF guys that were out there felt really uneasy about being there. He says one night, around midnight, as he gets off post, he has to walk by this building. As he's telling me this part, I notice that he starts to zone out and just staring at nothing. As he's walking by, he starts hearing rapping and wailing from inside. He squares off toward the building and gets his rifle at the ready. There's no one else around him to hear this. He calls out, "Who is that?" At this point, the wailing turns into sobbing and a deep, sorrowful moaning. He can't see anything with his NVGs, so he flips them up. He can't use the white light on his PEQ because light discipline. So he uses his red laser to try and identify someone, or at least let them know that they're being aimed at. He said the noises stop, and this shadow figure moves in front of a doorway. It floats like it's in water. He gets really creeped out and wants to leave. When he does, there's no one awake to tell this to. He says, "Screw it, I'm racking out." The next day, as soon as he wakes up, he talks to his lieutenant. The lieutenant doesn't say anything. He just pauses and takes a deep breath and says, "Look, just avoid screwing with that shit at night. And tell all your TLs and SLs to do the same. Got it?" Arby agrees, and he never went near it again. Anyone else have any weird shit like that happen? Sorry for my English, it's not my first language. When I was younger, I lived in Ushuaia for a couple years. When my parents left to work, they would leave me and my sister with a family who would take care of us until they came back. They worked in the city, and we lived a couple of minutes away from the city, and you can't leave two kids alone in a literal winter death trap. Their family lived in Ushuaia for almost 40 years, and to scare us whenever we were misbehaving, they told us that if we keep doing bad things, the luz mala, or bad light, would come and take us away. A disc will come down from the skies, and a tall blonde man will knock on the door to take you away. They loved blonde children like you and your sister. I never forgot about this for 20 years. So when I was at my job, I was feeling kind of spooked about it, just randomly. So I asked one of my co-workers about it this morning. He lived in Ushuaia for 25 years, and he told me that it wasn't that weird seeing blonde people that you have never seen before, buying supplies in big quantities and leaving for months. Ushuaia had a population of around 15,000, so you kind of knew everybody in some way or another. When asked about who they were, they told them that they were scientists doing some research in Antarctica, so people didn't pay much attention. But later, after other researchers arrived to the city, a conversation about the German scientists arose. When questioned, the scientists said that they actually weren't aware of any German group currently working in Antarctica, and that it was pretty much only them. After that, people stopped asking questions about the Germans, and whenever they arrived in the city, they would just try to leave them alone as much as possible. As you are all aware, military involvement in this zone is kinda high, so it was assumed that this is something that civil people didn't need to dig around too much. I would like to remember more, but I was just a kid there. But I have to wonder if there's some correlation between the big disc and the tall blonde men. When I was 19, I started my military service as a comm trainee in Finland. There was lots of in-the-woods exercises and lots of night patrolling. This one time, it was a week-long exercise in a big forested military area, and I got the first gate watch at 2 a.m. This was just after we got the squad tent set up. There were no lights allowed to be used at night, only the night goggles. Taking a pee or anything, or finding your way back in the dark was a huge pain. But I was at my guard post, and luckily there was another MP trainee there as well to keep me company. So we're smoking a cigarette and talking about our girlfriends and stuff like that. It's pretty quiet out. Everyone who isn't patrolling should be sleeping. It's pretty boring, if I'm honest, and we're just playing around with some night goggles. Then the MP is like going like, oh cool, I can see everything and all that. And then we hear rustling in the forest on the other side of the road that we were sitting on. We see a large, dark, humanoid figure, just for a second, that's very slowly in between the trees. We tell ourselves that it's probably somebody just walking around or whatever for some reason. We should do the password challenge. So we yell the challenge. There's no response. We yelled it a second time. Again, no answer. I put on my night vision goggles to check, but now I can't see anybody. Now the trees were so thin that you'd definitely be able to see somebody if they were trying to run away or trying to hide. But there was nothing. The MP radioed to the guard base to ask if somebody was out doing a routine. They replied with, not that I know of, all our guys are sleeping. I don't know who it is. It felt super weird that the guy just vanished in a couple of seconds. Everyone had stories of their night patrols, seeing shadow people and other weird things like that in the dark. and people who didn't respond to the password challenge, and then when you looked, there would be no one there. Nobody was dumb enough to open fire and wake everyone up because, well, then we'd all have to be staying up. I didn't think much of it until later, when we kept seeing things, more than one sometimes, of people just in the trees or figures just in the trees, just out of our eyesight. I don't know what they are, but I really don't think that it was our brain playing tricks on us. Basically, being posted as a guard, alone, in the middle of the night in a forest, is pretty unreal. So I'm Greek, and in my country they have conscription, so I was conscripted. I got stationed at a mechanized infantry battalion near the Turkish border. All the facilities were pretty crap, to be honest, despite being located inside the larger brigade camp. The place was pretty depressing, to be honest. There was fog, crows, sharp cold, and gloomy skies at all times. My company's in charge of a guard duty in one of the forts at the border. Imagine a small apartment, a bedroom with 6 bunk beds, a kitchen, a water closet, a tiny living room, and an officer's quarters. So, we were at the morning report at our base camp. Staff Sergeant asked for volunteers for a week at the fort. I've been in the military for some time, and I thought I was the shit by then. I raised my hand all like, oh, I would be honored, sir. I was thinking it'd be cool to get away from my sadist captain's screams for a while, and I'm still regretting it. We depart at 1700, and it's already dark when we get to the fort, half an hour later. The driver nopes out and leaves in a hurry, and I think, oh, well, that can't be good. So, another private buddy of mine, and a loner from a nearby battalion because we were short on people, were all there, plus this aforementioned staff sergeant. We were guarding the place, which pretty much means that we walk up and down the dirt road in front of it. The staff sergeant says that the guard duty begins at 2200, so we can feel free to screw around until then. He's a pretty cool guy. The staff sergeant is watching TV, the loner guy is cleaning his rifle, and my buddy and I are just outside chatting. He's been there before a few times, and he asks me if I know about the night visitors. And I say, the what? Supposedly, decades ago, an entire squad committed mass suicide for some reason, and it was in this very fort, and they apparently still roam around at night. And I say, oh, yeah, right. I wave it off as your garden variety army too spooky story. So, the guard time comes. My buddy guards first, then it's the loner, and then I get the third shift. First 2 hours go by without incident. My buddy comes back, wakes up the other guy, and tells him to get ready. I can't sleep, so I suggest that we watch some late night TV. My buddy agrees, and goes to get a bottle of water from the kitchen. The other guy looks pretty nervous for some reason. Nevertheless, he suits up, he grabs his rifle and heads outside. My buddy is still not back from the kitchen, so I go to look for him. The kitchen is in a separate room behind the main building, so I have to go outside. I don't want to get all dressed up, so I just put on my boots and a jacket. I head outside, and I see the flashlight beam dancing in the fog in the dirt road in front of the fort. Our protocol dictates that there are no lights of any kind allowed during guard duty at night. I'm a little pissed because this is the loner guy and he's going to get the rest of us in trouble. Fortunately, the staff sergeant is sleeping. I skip down the front steps, ready to give the guy a piece of my mind. My legs are freezing because I'm not wearing any pants. The guy's got his back turned to me. He's standing still, just outside the main gates. His flashlight is aimed at this shadowy figure in the fog. I stop walking and I just stand there for a bit. I think it's probably just my buddy trying to scare the guy. And then I hear my buddy, "Hey, get your ass over here. Dancing with the Stars is coming on, and there's going to be some babes on there. I turn around to see my buddy at the door of the building waving to me. I turn to the other guy and I yell, "Hey man, get the hell away from that thing." The guy drops his flashlight and runs back inside with me. The three of us are just standing at the door, looking at a pitch black figure that's really tall and has long arms, walking slowly in front of the flashlight. The staff sergeant wakes up and he's storming out of his room like, what the hell's all this noise about? We're speechless and scared. We point to him and tell him what we saw. It's no longer there. Naturally, he didn't believe us, and the next 6 days were really hard. It felt like a whole month. So I didn't used to believe in anything. Even with some of the weird stuff I've encountered, I just thought it could be explained, but after this happened, I don't have another explanation. So I was a recon guy, and during this one time, it was during an exercise. It was a big brigade-sized plus drill that was going down. I had just spent 2 days behind enemy lines. I got back with our own troops to settle in for some proper sleep for once. There was no real guard duty, just fire watch. The reason for this was the chances of there being an enemy anywhere near where I was basically zero, so we just had fire watch. Even if there was to be an enemy, they would have to cross about 600 meters of flat short grass, and somebody would be alerted even before they got close to us. So being recon, almost all of our boys insisted on sleeping in their driver's and gunner seats. I sleep in the passenger gunner seat. My driver sleeps in his seat. It's my turn for fire watch when this happened. I don't have to do a whole lot besides walking around, keeping warm, and not waking anybody up. Even though I'm told that I don't have to be on high alert, given where I am, I'm just on high alert by default. It's kinda hard to turn it off. Not that someone would be in our camp, but knowing that they could be watching across the fields or somewhere else just kind of really put me on edge. About halfway through my watch and on my way back to circle my car, I see the camo netting of our car bulging out from the driver's side. It's as if somebody went under the netting to try and talk to the driver. It's dark, and I only see the silhouette, but it's clear. I don't hear anyone, not even when I get close enough to be able to hear. I'm thinking at the time that it's someone from another unit trying to snatch our gear for some reason. I flip up the netting onto the roof, and I see a dude quickly stand up. He's clearly in a different uniform, one that's not ours. He has camo in his helmet, basic gear, no weapon, and he has face paint. I can just barely make out his facial features. I'm pretty sure he was Japanese American. I act all smug, thinking I caught him. I say, "Caught," and I give it a little chuckle, and I ask what unit he's from. The dude just gives me a wide grin. I can just see his teeth exposed in the dark. I didn't find it creepy at the time, just weird. I think he's just acting dumb because he got caught. So I'm like, "Oh, come on, you're caught. What unit are you from? How far did you have to come to do this?" The dude just stands there with the same grin on his face, not moving. Maybe he's not well. I start to get weirded out. I ask if he's okay, and I try to lay my left hand on his shoulder. My hand hits nothing. He does not fade away, he just stops existing entirely. I'm just standing there, looking at the sky from where he would be standing. In a state of shock, I think I'm in. I just stand there, trying to piece all the things together that I just saw. I just kind of chuckle about it at the time, but then it starts to sink in, and I get scared. I turn my head to look at my driver, He's fast asleep in his seat. I stand there for a good 5 or 10 minutes just trying to make sense of everything. I slowly put down the netting to cover the driver's side, and I walk back. The netting's got no bulge in the driver's side now. I don't do my last round as I'm too puzzled to make any sense of it. Since then, I have convinced myself that I must have seen some kind of hallucination, but I wasn't tired, and it was dark, but it was clear enough with the moon to see someone stand there, especially with the background of just grass. One other story that I heard was from an intel analyst. It was around 2003 or 2004. It was in Iraq. I can't remember where exactly he told me. He's watching their predator feed. He's looking for Iraqi military and insurgents. He starts scanning around this cemetery that the Marines were taking fire from earlier in the day. He sees a group of Iraqis sitting around a fire in the middle of a cemetery. The predator sensor is in infrared mode since it's night. The Iraqis are bright white from the heat. Right behind them, this black figure, a humanoid figure, stands behind them, meaning the figure is cold since the sensor was in white hot mode. None of the guys notice him, even though he was just a few feet away. The sensor operator attempts to follow the figure, but it disappears behind the mausoleum. I have to wonder if it was a spirit or if it was a jinn. So, what'd you think of those encounters? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. And a couple things I'd like to add is that at the beginning of the video I talked about how there was a couple Owlman encounters. I believe it's in Judaic. Yeah, I think it's a Judaic belief that an Owlman or an owl head is representative of the Canaanite demon god Moloch. So do you think that Moloch was attacking these people? Or do you think it was just a cryptid? Let me know. The other cool thing that I didn't have a specific story, but I read about in a book, I'll have to, if I find the book, I'll just read the whole thing and I'll do a video on it. But the particular part was of these KGB agents for the USSR military. They were doing seismic experiments and nuclear experiments and stuff. So basically what happened was that they were putting bombs underground to test seismic activity and stuff. And there was this one particular time where there seemed to be a powerful enough explosion to cause an alteration in time. So what happened is, after the experiments or bomb went off, there was so much energy displaced that some of the people or scientists in the experiments, one of them ended up in the basement of a bunker. He just appeared there when he came to. He went unconscious and he woke up in the basement of a bunker. Another guy woke up about 200 meters away. And one other guy who stayed conscious talked about how the earth got real weird. It was almost like he was walking in a puddle for a few seconds, and then all of a sudden everything was normal again. So just really extreme strangeness happening. But let me know what you think about that. Maybe it's too strange to believe, I don't know. I found it very interesting, so I'll have to search and find the book again. But until then, I think I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump with me. Thank you for watching. And if you liked the video, then consider donating to the channel. I have a PayPal and a Patreon in the description. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump once again. And yeah, catch you later.